I think corporate relationships are quite different. What the Prince Consort was trying to do is try and say, look, you've got to have a marriage of art. I think that they then split again, and I think they're gradually coming together.
Prince Philip stood as Queen Elizabeth's constant companion for decades, the quiet force beside her at every event, fulfilling his duties with unwavering dedication. But in his final years, something unexpected happened. He began to distance himself from the Queen, more often than ever before. Just before his passing, he revealed the real reason behind this change, offering a side of their relationship that few knew existed. What could have caused this shift? And what secrets did Prince Philip uncover about their bond in those final moments? Let's uncover the truth behind the royal couple's private struggle. A partnership built on distance. Their story started in 1934. Elizabeth was just 8 when she met Philip for the first time. He was a blonde, blue-eyed teenager from a fallen Greek royal line with a military future ahead. Their paths crossed again over the years, and by the time Elizabeth was a teenager, she had made up her mind. He was the one. In 1947, they got engaged. 5 years later, Elizabeth became queen. Suddenly, Philip's identity shifted from a rising naval officer to the husband of the most powerful woman in the British Empire. What followed was a lifetime of compromises, adjustments, and a very non-traditional marriage behind all the tradition. From the outside, they were the ideal royal couple, steady, united, and always in step. But privately, they made an unusual choice. They often lived apart. While Elizabeth worked from Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, Philip preferred quieter surroundings. He split his time between Sandringham, Balmoral, and later Wood Farm, a cottage on the royal estate. And this wasn't just about avoiding the cameras. It was a practical, personal decision, shaped by years of strain, expectations, and the way their individual roles pulled them in different directions. When Elizabeth became queen in 1952, everything changed. Royal protocol made it clear she was the sovereign, and everyone else, including her husband, came second. Philip had to give up his naval career, something that had given him both purpose and independence. His surname wasn't passed to their children. Even his seating at official events was carefully arranged to reflect his secondary role. This wasn't easy for a man used to command. He had been a naval commander, someone used to making fast decisions and being in control. Suddenly, his job was to stand beside the Queen in silence, wave on cue, and never overshadow her. For a man with a strong, action-oriented personality, that kind of restraint wasn't natural. In public, Philip always fulfilled his role. But privately, he made it known that living full-time at Buckingham Palace was never part of the plan. It wasn't a falling out or lack of love. It was about space, physical and emotional. He once described himself as the only man in the country who couldn't give his children his name or make household decisions without a committee. After retiring from public duties in 2017, Philip quietly moved into Wood Farm at Sandringham. It was a modest home by royal standards, and he liked it that way. It gave him peace. There, he read, painted, and hosted the occasional guest. He didn't attend major events unless absolutely necessary. He wasn't hiding. He was finally living on his own terms. Despite the separate addresses, the bond between them remained. They kept in touch constantly. Elizabeth would visit when her schedule allowed, and they spent holidays together. But by then, both of them had settled into the understanding that marriage didn't have to mean sharing a bedroom, or even a house, every night. Friends of the family often pointed out how they seemed most at ease when they were apart. Philip didn't thrive in the stifling structure of palace life. Elizabeth, on the other hand, was the palace. She ran it, represented it, and rarely left its world. Living separately gave both of them a chance to breathe, which in turn kept their relationship strong in its own way. The quiet struggles of a royal consort. Long before Prince Philip became the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen's other half, he was a child without a stable home, born into a royal family that barely held onto its name. Born in 1921 on the Greek island of Corfu, Philip came into the world as a prince of Greece and Denmark. But just a year later, his family was exiled from Greece after a political disaster involving his uncle, King Constantine I. The monarchy collapsed, and the new government forced the entire royal family out. Philip was still an infant when he was smuggled out of the country in a fruit crate, carried aboard a British naval ship sent to rescue the family. From that moment on, he would live a life without any real place to call home. His family bounced between France, Germany, and England. His mother, Princess Alice of Battenberg, suffered a mental breakdown and was institutionalized. His father, Prince Andrew of Greece, drifted into self-imposed exile and practically disappeared from Philip's life. By the age of 10, Philip was alone, passed from relative to relative, school to school, country to country. Despite his royal blood, Philip's childhood was filled with chaos, not comfort. He spent most of his formative years in boarding schools, mostly in Britain and Germany, where he was known for being athletic, blunt, and fiercely independent. He had no permanent address and very little parental guidance, which shaped him into someone who trusted discipline over sentiment. The people who raised him weren't warm guardians. They were naval officers, schoolmasters, and distant relatives. But they gave him structure, and Philip learned early on that strength and silence were often the only tools he had. By the time he reached his teens, he was essentially raising himself. His sisters married into German nobility, some of them even into families with Nazi ties, leaving Philip on his own in Britain during the rise of World War II. He knew he had to make something of himself, and so he entered the Royal Navy in 1939. In wartime, Philip thrived. He rose through the ranks, commanded ships, and saw real combat. For the first time, he wasn't a displaced prince. He was an officer, a man with a role, a uniform, and some real respect. Everything changed the moment he married Princess Elizabeth in 1947. One day, he was a Navy man used to shouting over storm winds. The next, he was bowing to courtiers and adjusting to a life where everything had to be done quietly and in the proper order. Philip didn't ease into his role as royal consort. He was dropped into it. He had to renounce his Greek and Danish titles and become a naturalized British citizen. Even his name was changed. His birth name, Philip Schleswig Holstein-Sonderburg-Glücksburg, was replaced with Mountbatten, his mother's anglicized family name. Overnight, the man who had survived war and built a career was now expected to walk 2 steps behind his wife. And yet, Philip adapted, not smoothly, not happily, but dutifully. For someone who had spent most of his life calling the shots, being told what to wear, where to stand, and how to smile, must have felt like a prison sentence. But he accepted it, knowing the weight of the institution he'd just married into. What people often forget is that Prince Philip wasn't just the Queen's husband. He was a man who never got to be the star in his own story. Every time he walked into a room, all eyes were on Elizabeth. His job was to stand tall, look respectful, and say very little. Behind closed doors, that silence wore on him. He was not someone who liked being ignored or minimized. He had opinions, strong ones, and didn't hesitate to express them when he could. But publicly, he was expected to be the invisible support beam holding up the crown. This invisible burden turned Philip into someone hard to read. He was known for his bluntness and off-the-cuff remarks, which often made headlines and sparked controversy. But that dry wit, that sarcastic humor, was often his only outlet. It was how he coped with a life he never chose but couldn't walk away from. The father. Struggling with fatherhood. Philip's relationship with his children, particularly Charles, was distant and complicated. He wasn't the warm, doting father figure the public expected from a royal patriarch. He came from a generation that saw emotions as weaknesses and parenting as discipline. He wanted his children, especially Charles, to be tough, to be leaders, to understand duty. But Charles was a sensitive child, one who felt smothered by his father's expectations and misunderstood by his stern approach. They clashed often, particularly when it came to Charles's education. Philip pushed him toward Gordonstown, the same rigid Scottish boarding school he had attended. Charles hated it, describing it as colditz in kilts, while Philip believed it built character. This gap between them, between a son seeking affection and a father demanding resilience, would define their relationship for decades. Even at the height of the royal ceremony, Philip often looked slightly out of place, less like a polished royal and more like a man who'd rather be somewhere else. And that was often true. He felt most at home in places like Sandringham, Balmoral, or Windsor, where he could escape the public eye. He loved working with his hands, designing his own carriages, sketching furniture, or fussing over the layout of royal estates. Those were the spaces where he could breathe. He also poured himself into his own legacy, the Duke of Edinburgh's award. The program wasn't just a publicity project. It reflected his belief that young people should learn resilience, self-reliance, and physical endurance. In a way, it was his version of parenting, building a framework that would help future generations face challenges the way he had. Prince Philip's identity extended well beyond being Queen Elizabeth II's husband. He was a man with a strong practical mind and a genuine passion for innovation and engineering. From a young age, Philip showed a natural curiosity about how things worked. This interest was not just a hobby, but something that shaped much of his life and his approach to his role within the royal family. Before his royal duties took center stage, Philip was educated at naval colleges and served in the British Royal Navy during World War II. This experience helped him develop a disciplined, problem-solving mindset. The military environment sharpened his technical skills and gave him first-hand exposure to new technologies and machinery. These experiences fueled a lifelong fascination with engineering and invention, which he carried into his royal life. Prince Philip's interest in engineering found a unique outlet within the royal residences. Buckingham Palace and other royal homes were steeped in tradition, often relying on outdated systems that made daily operations complicated. Rather than accepting these limitations, Philip took a hands-on role in improving the practical side of royal life. One of his significant contributions was overseeing the modernization of electrical systems throughout the royal estates. Many parts of Buckingham Palace were not built to handle the demands of modern electrical appliances and lighting, which created frequent problems. Philip understood the importance of safe and reliable infrastructure and worked closely with engineers and electricians to upgrade these systems. Beyond electrical improvements, Philip also focused on the functional areas that supported the household, such as kitchens and workshops. He encouraged redesigning spaces to make them more efficient and easier for the staff to use. This approach reflected his practical mindset. Rather than clinging to tradition, he sought ways to make royal life run more smoothly behind the scenes. His involvement was not just managerial. Philip was known to engage directly with architects, engineers, and craftsmen, discussing plans and offering his own ideas. This proactive attitude was unusual for someone in his position, but showed his deep commitment to problem-solving and improving the royal environment. Among Philip's lesser-known but deeply personal interests was carriage driving. This traditional sport involves controlling horse-drawn carriages through courses or competitions. Unlike many royal hobbies, carriage driving required physical skill, precision, and a close bond with horses. Philip did not only participate in carriage driving as a casual pastime. He was heavily involved in advancing the sport itself. He worked on designing and improving the carriages, focusing on making them safer and more functional. For example, he helped introduce innovations in carriage construction that enhanced stability and control, reducing risks for both driver and horses. Even into his later years, Philip remained active in the carriage driving community. He competed in events and often traveled internationally to promote the sport. His enthusiasm helped bring attention to carriage driving, supporting its growth and development beyond the royal circle. This interest also revealed another side of Philip's personality, his love of physical challenges and outdoor activities. Carriage driving allowed him to escape the formalities of royal life and engage in something hands-on, where skill and concentration mattered more than status or protocol. Championing science and technology. Philip's passion for innovation was not limited to personal hobbies or the royal estates. He had a deep and ongoing interest in science, technology, and industrial progress. Throughout his life, he made it a point to visit laboratories, factories, research centers, and technology companies. These visits were more than ceremonial. He asked detailed questions and showed a genuine desire to understand new scientific developments. His support for science was also public. In 1961, Prince Philip made history as the first member of the British royal family to appear on a popular television science program called Tomorrow's World. The show introduced viewers to the latest inventions and technological breakthroughs. Philip's appearance helped bring attention to scientific progress at a time when technology was rapidly changing the world. Beyond media appearances, Philip supported many charitable organizations and trusts dedicated to science and technology. He was a patron of institutions focused on engineering, innovation, and environmental conservation. His efforts helped encourage public interest in these areas and highlighted the importance of investing in research and development. Prince Philip's legacy is not just about his title or his position beside Queen Elizabeth II. It is defined by his relentless drive to make things better, more efficient, and more meaningful within the royal family and beyond. His practical contributions left a lasting mark that extended well past the formal events and public appearances most commonly associated with royalty. One of the most significant parts of his legacy lies in the way he modernized the royal household. By championing improvements to the infrastructure of royal residences, Philip helped transform what had often been seen as old-fashioned and rigid institutions into homes and workplaces fit for the 20th and 21st centuries. This transformation was not only about convenience, it reflected a broader understanding that the monarchy needed to adapt to a changing world to maintain its relevance. For example, upgrading electrical systems and improving staff areas might seem like small details, but they represented a fundamental shift. Philip's practical interventions demonstrated that tradition and progress could coexist. He did not seek to erase royal history, but to make daily life more manageable and safer for everyone involved. This approach subtly reshaped how the royal family operated behind closed doors. Prince Philip's impact reached beyond the palace walls. His work promoting science, technology, and conservation introduced the public to important causes at a critical time, in an era when the world was rapidly changing. Through space, exploration, new medical technologies, and environmental challenges, Philip positioned the monarchy as a supporter of progress. His patronage of scientific institutions and his enthusiastic public appearances helped demystify technology for many people. By showing interest and respect for innovation, Philip encouraged the British public to value scientific research and environmental protection. This influence was especially important in a country where the monarchy often serves as a symbol of stability and tradition. In addition to his public support for science, Philip was deeply involved in environmental conservation efforts. He understood early on the importance of protecting natural habitats and promoting sustainable practices. His work with various charities and organizations focused on conservation helped raise awareness and build momentum for environmental causes long before they became mainstream. One of Philip's most enduring legacies is the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Founded in 1956, this youth program reflects many of Philip's values: resilience, self-reliance, and practical skills. The award encourages young people to challenge themselves physically, develop new abilities, volunteer in their communities, and take part in adventurous journeys. The program has become internationally recognized and remains one of the most successful youth development initiatives in the world. It has inspired millions of young people to push their limits, discover new interests, and grow in confidence and independence. Through this award, Philip's commitment to personal growth and practical achievement continues to influence lives far beyond the royal family. As the years passed, Philip became more of a shadow behind the throne. He was present, but quieter. His health declined, his public appearances thinned, and his sharpness mellowed into tired reserve. In 2017, when he officially stepped away from public duties, it wasn't just retirement, it was a release. The man who had spent most of his adult life walking behind someone else could finally sit down. He didn't retire into irrelevance, though. Those close to him said he enjoyed the quiet. He spent his final years mostly at Wood Farm on the Sandringham estate, away from cameras, away from court politics. Just a man with his books, his horses, and a staff who didn't treat him like glass. Even as death approached, Prince Philip remained stoic. There were no dramatic confessions, no longing farewells, just the same stubborn silence he'd carried all his life. To the world, he was the Queen's lifelong companion. But to those who paid attention, he was something more: a displaced prince, a reluctant royal, and a man who spent decades shaping a role that was never built with him in mind. A marriage tested by time and duty. Queen Elizabeth ascended to the throne at a young age, dedicating herself fully to the responsibilities of ruling. Over the decades, her commitment to the crown always came before her personal wishes. Meanwhile, Prince Philip, her husband, quietly lived alongside her, supporting her reign but gradually facing his own struggles. As they both grew older, the weight of their roles began to affect their relationship in ways the public rarely saw. The royal family showed a united front, but beneath the surface, things were far more complicated. In the years leading up to Prince Philip's death, his health steadily declined, and the time he and Elizabeth spent together became more limited and precious. Although they still shared important moments, Philip's desire for independence remained strong. He withdrew more from the public eye, spending long periods at Windsor Castle or Sandringham House, seeking peace away from the constant demands of royal life. Those closest to the couple noticed a quiet tension, an unspoken understanding that their personal connection had changed. Their relationship remained respectful and affectionate, but their separate lives grew clearer. To most, their separate living arrangements seemed like a result of busy schedules and official duties. Yet, the reality was far more complex than a simple matter of convenience. Queen Elizabeth remained focused on her role as monarch, often putting her own needs aside. Philip, on the other hand, had given up his own career and personal ambitions to support her. This sacrifice took a toll on him. The role of consort, though important, left Philip feeling overshadowed and unfulfilled. Over time, this frustration grew, and he increasingly sought solitude in his private interests and quiet retreats. Their marriage, once seen as a model of harmony, started to show cracks. Public appearances painted a picture of unity, but behind the scenes, the couple's lives were marked by emotional distance. Staff quietly discussed the strain of their separate living situations, but the palace carefully avoided public acknowledgement. Maintaining the image of a perfect royal marriage was far easier than exposing its complexities. Neither Elizabeth nor Philip openly admitted the changes in their marriage. Their deep sense of duty and loyalty to the monarchy kept their personal struggles private. Still, those close to them knew the truth. Their marriage had shifted. As Philip's health worsened, his presence became more withdrawn. He spent more time away in his private quarters or in the quiet corners of their estates, a shadow of the man who had once been Elizabeth's constant companion. The distance between them was painful but real, a reflection of the private challenges that came with lives lived in the public eye. Philip's frustration had built up over many years. While he supported Elizabeth's reign, the role he played was not one he fully accepted. Living in the shadow of a powerful monarch weighed heavily on him. He had sacrificed his own ambitions and desires to stand by her side. But over time, that sacrifice turned into an internal struggle few could understand. This admission came late, but it was honest and raw. Philip wasn't blaming anyone or expressing regret. He was simply sharing a truth that had burdened him for decades. Speaking it aloud lifted a weight off his shoulders, even if it could never undo the distance that had grown between them. After his revelation, the world began to rethink what they knew about the royal marriage. Many had guessed there were challenges behind the scenes, but few expected Philip to open up about his internal battle. For some, this was a moment that made him seem more human. A man who had wrestled with his identity while standing beside a queen. Prince Philip's honest words show a side of royal life we rarely see, a side where real people face real struggles. It makes us wonder how much of themselves they can keep while living under constant public attention. What do you think about Philip's decision to live apart and find his own path? Share your thoughts below.